Do you think that maybe the schools have some responsibility to better prepare paralegals and lawyers to have the skills that they actually need? Because, for example, I remember in my paralegal certificate program, there was a semester on law office technology. And it was very general, just brushed the surface of things like Westlaw and Lexis. And they don't really tell you how much you should know and what you're going to be using, things like the table of authorities in Microsoft Word and Adobe and, all of those things. And I like that it's in a lot of the law schools, but I don't see it in as many paralegal schools.
Well, and even in the law schools, it tends to be used in specialty classes, electives where people want to learn about technology as opposed to being integrated into the core curriculum. And so I believe that schools, frankly, all the way down to grammar schools, but schools in general should integrate competency-based technology training into the core curriculum. In particular, it's a much better way of teaching technical skills than classroom instruction. Classroom instruction is great, lecture format, the Socratic method for understanding broad concepts and ideas, but for acquiring narrow technical skills, competency-based training is far superior. And so it should be modules that are done outside of the classroom for any school that is preparing people for an office environment. We have legal specific training, but we've actually also opened up more general training because there are lots of other professions that require it. So I think it should be part of core curriculums in schools. And then I think that it should be used for screening by corporations and law firms, not necessarily to decide who to hire, but once they've hired them to decide what kind of training they need. So if they got the training they needed, fantastic, they're going to fly through all the assessments. And if they don't, well, then you know exactly what they need to learn to be where they need to be. I can tell you that at Baker McKenzie, where I was permitted to do so, because it's different in different jurisdictions, and I'm not giving anyone legal advice about what's appropriate in their jurisdiction. Where it was possible, I built the legal project management team. Excel is extremely important for project managers. And every single resume that came in said that people had Excel skills. And then we would run them through an assessment. And a lot of those resumes turned out to be wrong. And by the way, not lying, wrong. And the reason is that people don't know what they don't know. How does someone who doesn't know a lot about Excel realize that they don't know that much about Excel? Because they might know a little and think that that's all that Excel does. And so a lot of people consider themselves to be where they need to be with Word, Excel, et cetera, because they have no idea what else that the software can do. And so by creating a standard that comes with assessment and of course also training, we can actually identify gaps that people aren't able to identify themselves. So it is an institutional responsibility, both schools and employers.
So let's say a paralegal or an associate, like in your example, they can now get this Word project done or this Excel project done in 20 or 30 minutes instead of 2 hours. If they work at big law, they now have to worry about less billable hours. Like, how would you handle that, or what would you say to that?
Well, first of all, right now, no one has to worry about fewer billable hours. Firms are turning work down because it's such a crazy period. But even in periods that aren't this crazy, if you look at collected realization rates, you understand that law firms write off an enormous amount of time before they send bills to clients. And the partners at the firms consider this to be good client service. They look at a bill and they have a gut reaction about whether or not it's commensurate with the value delivered, the client's expectations. And a huge part of that is efficiency of the people supporting the matter, the paralegals, the associates. Should it have taken this long to do X, Y, or Z? Did someone spend too long? And if the answer is yes, they cut that time. And so they are cutting massive amounts of time. we're talking on the order of about $11 billion last year in the AmLaw 100 alone. So that accrues to both the top and bottom line in a very serious way, and also affects the perception of the individual, how much of their time gets cut. So I don't consider that to be a real issue. And by the way, if anyone objects to being more efficient because they will make less money, they're violating any number of ethical rules, and not just 1.1 comment 8 on competence, but also 1.5 on fees, 5 and as well as if they're making this decision at the firm level, 5.1 and 5.3 on delegation to lawyers and to non-lawyers, which I'm not a big fan of the non-lawyer term, but it is the technical term in the rules. I prefer allied professionals.
Thank you for that. I agree.
But if I'm discussing it in the context of the rules, I use the terminology of the rules.